we're talking about creating a SaaS homepage that converts. Who's this talk really for? This is really for founders in these early stage companies. Ideally, you have a product that solves a significant problem for somebody. You're not like a pre-solution. This is definitely less helpful in that realm. But if you have customers, and depending on how many customers you have, changes a little bit of how you actually structure the page and what you're going to put into it. But really for those people in that spot. And we're talking about SaaS homepages that convert. So I thought maybe it'd be fun to show some that are just pretty bad, and I'm assuming don't convert as well. So these are some hero screens of some of my favorites that I've found over the years. One platform, many solutions. Transform and future-proof your board at scale. I bet you have a lot of questions. What does this mean? Who is this for? When I first saw this, I was like, I don't actually know anything what this means. What is a board? Like a board game, shuffleboard? Who knows, right? Here's another one. Connected people make better teams. Mystery brings people together through magical shared experiences and powerful insights. You see this, you're like, is this even a software product? Is this an event? Is this a team building activity? Is this a retreat? Who knows? And these are the main two headlines that people are going to see when they go on this website. And this one's funny because this is actually a very well-known marketer who has made this, probably the top in the world, a lot of people say. This is their specific site. You're ready. Now is the best time. And this play button on the page is actually not even clickable. So this is all you see, and you really don't know where to go, and it's not very helpful in my opinion. So most homepages on the internet today, especially if you're in the SaaS world, are pretty bad. So the bar is pretty low, which means you have a chance to stand out pretty easily. And we think that homepages are important not just for conversions, but they're essentially the primary place where you position who you're actually for. So what your product does, who it does it for. So in the minds of the customers, they have all these different consideration sets of companies that they would work with to solve specific problems. You want to position yourself in one of those categories as a solution for that problem. So you position yourself in the mind of the customer, but also your position in the market. Maybe you're the cheaper version of a more expensive alternative, or maybe you're the higher quality, more premium version of a cheaper alternative. All these things are positioning, and usually they live on the homepage. As you get bigger, you get a team, you develop maybe a robust messaging house that has all your specific things. These can be in Google Docs or whatever, and tons of pages long. But in the early days, really, the single source of truth is the homepage. So you can come back to it, you can tweak it, you can test it, all that stuff very easily. So that's why we kind of focus on homepage as this home for the positioning of your company. I stole this from Winter, if you're familiar. Pep, he's a great follow on LinkedIn. They're doing great stuff over there. Really, if you want a good homepage that performs well and accomplishes its goals, it really has to speak to these different levels. The clarity, what is it? Relevance, is it aligned with my priorities and pains? Value, how bad do I want it? And differentiation, why should I pick the solution over other ones that might be in my consideration set? And my partner and I, Robert, you might have seen us, we both post on LinkedIn, we tag each other a lot, but we both were talking about it. We would actually add one more level of who is it for? Is this for me specifically? And I think Pep would probably say that his framework would assume that the people who get to your page have kind of already crossed that boundary of like, I know that I'm in the realm of people who might buy this. So we would go explicit about that. And then when we're actually building a homepage, usually we will follow this rough skeleton. So we'll be thinking, what is the hero? Then we go to a trusted by, which is like a credentials, basically letting people know that you know what you're doing and you're not some startup that's going to fold tomorrow or steal their money or something. And then really, what are the three main value props of your product? Then maybe some testimonials, and then like a how it works section. Sometimes we will have like a feature grid in lieu of a how it works section. And obviously we'll have some CTAs, like book a demo or download the product or whatever it is, sprinkled throughout this skeleton. All right, so what actually goes in a hero? We like to think of it kind of like, if you're familiar with design, atomic design, where you have atoms, that go into organisms, and maybe that's familiar language or not. But essentially, we think of these as atomic messaging elements. And you'll see we have little squares throughout, and these can be reconfigured to build all these different messaging elements. So really, when we're thinking of a hero, you could imagine that main headline and then your subheadline. The main headline for an early stage startup really should be the main capability that is unlocked by your product. And when we talk about capabilities, they are a new way of doing something that you previously could not do, and now you can do. So this is not drive more revenue, get more customers. Those we would call benefits of using it. First order benefits, second order benefits of actually using the product. But the capability is actually the thing that's unlocked. The product category is really crucial in the early days because it lets people know what to compare you to. And I'll show you an example in just a second. Persona, that's like we actually want to get to a title. We're talking B2B. When we go B2C, it's different kind of rules of how you think about a persona. But with B2B, a persona really is like a title of someone. So a marketing manager, a director of product, or whatever it is. And then within some type of company type. And this can be highly detailed if you know specifically who you're going after. If you have like a best fit customer, you might as well put it there in your hero. If you're not quite sure, you could go a little broader. And sometimes if you're in the early days, you might only know the persona or only know the company type. And so we always would say that one of these versus 0 is better. So 1 is better than none. Having one of them, if you only have 1, that's better than none. But 2 is better than 1. If you can get both, your page is going to be a lot more resonant. So I want to give an example with a company that we're all familiar with. Imagine that we're in the early days of Slack. And in the early days of Slack, they're not this global 2 billion, like multi-billion dollar company, way more than 2 billion, but not a multi-billion dollar company. This is in the early days. And if you look at the early days, they actually went to market trying to get developers using it. So if we were to write the hero in the early days of Slack, before anyone knew, and I think maybe they started in like 2009. So wind back your clocks and undo all the advancement and regular commonplace messaging apps that you've seen, and imagine that we're in the early days. The main capability of Slack, writing this hero with the developer persona in mind, let's say it's manage your team's communication in one place. We also like to say that when we're talking about the persona, because you might be saying, well, I have a B2B product that is used by someone, but is bought by someone else. We have multi-layers. The easy way to answer who should I write it for, because the person higher up is going to have a different set of things that they're looking for than the end user, is who's going to see this page? Who's going to be the one that's most likely to convert? A lot of people say, well, the buck stops with the CEO, so maybe I should write it to convince them. The CEO is probably not going to be the one looking for a solution, going through and actually, clicking book a demo or whatever. So Slack was a bottoms up approach, trying to get people to use it. So if it was the engineering, this would probably be actually developing like manager, or like, basically someone with a team. So a messaging app for development managers in maybe remote first companies would maybe be the level of specificity we would go at the early days. And you would do this. So this kind of gets at the key messages that would say, oh, this is for me, or it's not. And then I would scroll down. Or maybe we could even say like developer teams to get both levels. So then we talk about the value props. What are the value props of actually using this? What is a value prop in general? It's a person who's using an alternative way of doing things, like a process or a product or maybe working with a service provider, an alternative that runs into a problem using it that way that gets solved by your product's capability, which is powered by a specific feature, which then drives benefits, which we would say are like a state change in your app. So like increase of something good or a decrease of something bad. So an unlocked new capability versus a benefit that's a state change in one or the other. We also like to think of the value prop as the bridge between the product and the market. When you're talking about product market fit, really being able to speak to the alternatives and the problem is the bridge that allows you to talk about the capabilities, features, and benefits. Lots of times people will just put these on the page or show these to people without addressing these, and then people don't care. They don't actually care at all. But if you can tie it to you're currently doing things this way and that's causing these problems, and we solve those problems, you're gonna be much more likely to convert. So let's go back to our Slack example. Imagine we're writing for an engineering manager who's using group chats, email threads to communicate with their team. Well, what's the problem with doing it that way? Some people have Androids, some have iPhones. If you've ever done the cross-platform messaging, Apple makes it really tough. So you can't really do it very well. Images don't really send, stuff doesn't send. It's just a bad experience. Some people do a lot of work on their computers and maybe they don't have Mac and they have PCs, and PCs can't really text in the same way. I know there's like some Android chat, but that's much newer. We're back in 2009. So if you had a PC, you couldn't really text back then. And maybe these long email threads is kind of a nightmare to go back and forth, and people create separate chains and things like that. So these are the problems. Well, what does Slack do? The capability in one of these sub value props, you could communicate with your team in one app, regardless of the device. That's an unlocked capability that was not possible before. And what is the feature that powers that? It's this cross-platform chat interface. And the benefit is that you can spend more time working and collaborating and less time searching through, where was that? Was it this or that? So when you hit all these different elements, you basically build a very compelling value prop. And obviously the other value props on Slack, as they were selling it, because in our homepage skeleton, we would encourage you to do 3. The other one might be explaining channels, right? And that could be something around open collaboration, collaborate with other teams, be able to see, take down silos, things like that. A third value prop could be something about integrations, right? Easily pull in data from Google Drive or from any Jira or whatever you're using. So we would actually build those 3 value props. So at a high level, that's kind of how we think about messaging for homepages. But yes, would love to hear if anyone has any questions in the chat. If anyone's watching, feel free to drop that. And Andrew, I'll kick it back to you. I know you had some questions that you were thinking through.
Yeah, thanks, Anthony, for running us through that. I think a lot of that, kind of to sum it up, like clarity's power for people. Hey, you get someone on a homepage. How do you make sure that you're talking to the right person with the right message? And how can you start to hold a spot in their mind of, hey, what am I doing before? What are the different things I'm evaluating? Most people don't buy SaaS and just look at one, right? You're looking at a few different ones. And so how are they different? How are they the same? How do I know when to, we talked about conversions kind of ahead of this, and part of the title is like, how do I know as a user, as a potential customer, like if I should learn more, if I should either, product-led growth, if I should sign up and really start using the app, or if I should book a demo with sales or whatever the next step is. Making sure I'm in the right spot is going to be the number one thing that is going to determine whether they move forward or not. I have a few questions here that I'll ask. What are some of the biggest mistakes you think that startups make when positioning on their homepage?
Yeah, I think they fall into one of 2 categories. One of them is around the persona, and the other one is around the way they talk about benefits. So when we're thinking about personas, they usually will either not include any persona, or they'll have too many represented on the homepage. And those both cause different problems. If you have no personas, you get this very generic, kind of just like a feature overview, but it's not connected to anything. It doesn't have that bridge to the actual person to say it solves this problem for you. Because if you have a very horizontal product and you're trying to speak to 10 different industries, 10 different personas all at once, it's going to be so watered down that no one's going to care. It's not going to be compelling. On the flip side, if you have none, that's going to be bad. If you have too many, it's going to be too confusing. So that's like the big categories around like, who is this for? Do you have anyone in mind? And then the second big problem that we see is how they talk about benefits. So we like to think about it like first order, second order, third order benefits. So let's take Slack as the example. If the benefit is I to spend less time digging through old email threads because I have it all in this chat, that's a first order benefit. A second order benefit might be, so then I can work better with my team, get more done. Third order benefit, I can ship a better product. Fourth order benefit, that can drive more revenue. But lots of companies will put that fourth order benefit up at the top, drive more revenue with Slack. And in the early days of the startup, the biggest question is, how much do I believe that you can do what you say you can do? Believability with early stage startups is the key to either converting or not converting. So when you talk 4 benefits down the line, fourth order benefits, no one will believe you because they'll say you're a messaging app. Unless you're like somehow collecting money, then this is not going to get me more revenue. It's too many steps. Rob, my partner, Rob Kaminsky, some of you probably have seen him on LinkedIn. He used the example of like a map. It's like someone handed you a map and said, this map's going to get you to California, but it's only a map of Illinois. Like, yeah, well, it'll get you in the right direction and you'll just keep going. And it's like, I don't really trust this map to get me all the way there because I can see it really only speaks to this one specific issue.
Yeah. Yeah, we talk about this a lot internally, that like a lot of the messaging positioning problems we see on homepages are really a result of a strategy problem, right? Like nobody wants to decide on a smaller market or a smaller, TAM or whatever, right? They're trying to pitch a larger market opportunity, but really that's the rub, right? It's like, you want a big opportunity. Everyone wants to be a unicorn, but you have to start with a segment or specific enough people where you can actually create a useful enough tool to get those fourth order benefits and, prove those out versus, like some of the examples you showed, right? What was one? I'm trying to think of one of them. One platform, many solutions. Great. Like, is that Salesforce? It could be, right? Like, if you have the notoriety and the proof and the kind of name recognition, you can get away with that. Like, a lot of companies that grow ultimately can be more vague because they house multiple brands underneath that.
Yep.
We'll hop to Brad's question here and then come back if there are any others. So let me show it up here. Thanks, Brad, for sending this in. So what's the item we put above the fold next to the hero image? Should it be who it's for and what it does?
Yeah, so I think Brad, if you popped on late, basically it's, and let me share, I'll share this slide again. I'm going to present. It's really this slide. It's the main capabilities, the headline, and then it's these pieces: product category for a specific persona in a specific type of company. So we think about this X for Y sometimes, like it's a messaging app for developer teams in remote first companies, and the main capability. So definitely, that's probably the easiest way to answer that question. And then let's add Andrew back in.
I kept adding myself back in as well. So thanks, Brad, for that. That's a good question. Beyond what we talked about of like strategy and like, I guess shrinking the market, why do you think most startups struggle with picking, one or two personas or picking one or two use cases?
Yeah, there's kind of like a cycle that we see, and there's no problem with this. This is actually probably what we would recommend. You kind of start in the first phase where you're just seeing, can I find a problem that I can actually solve? And a lot of times when you solve that problem, you realize this problem actually exists in many different industries. And so what you end up doing is you say, okay, well, who should I market this to? And when you're trying to sell it to investors, lots of times, so you want to give this vision that it's a massive TAM. So you start bundling and saying it could be sold to these people, these people, like Amazon, right? In the early days, they probably were pitching to investors, this is going to be the everything store, right? A to Z, and it's going to be everything you can imagine. But publicly, they needed to pick books as an initial one, right? But so usually you're in this early stage where you don't really know, and you have a lot of different ideas of who it could be for. And then you kind of need to go through that like lean startup loop where you're trying to sell it and tweak it and pivot, and that whole piece of this experimentation, we like to call it like founder-led sales at this point, where you're going out pounding the pavement. And you really need to get to a certain level of revenue or a certain amount of customers across multiple segments before you can even have the data to make the decision of who you're going to focus and position on. So rather than positioning too early in a big public way, we would say make multiple versions of these pages, use that same formula, and put them in front of different teams, right? Like put them in front of a marketing team, put them in front of a sales team, put them in front of companies of this size and that, but write them specifically for each of them. Like I like to say, web pages are free, like if you use Webflow or whatever you're using, you can add multiple pages. They don't charge you by the page. So make a highly specific page and use those as experimentation tools. Then when you've got enough data, you can look across, maybe if it's a sales-led company, you can look at all your accounts, segment based on who was the easiest to land, who had the fastest sales cycle, who recommends you the most to other people, who's taking your upsells. You can categorize, break it down and say, this segment's actually probably my primary one, and then position around them. Do this whole exercise again, put it at the company level. Or if you're a product-led company, it might be, did I get enough product analytics of all these different users? Who logs in every single day? Who's sending the most messages? Who's uploading the most files or whatever it is? And I'm going to position around that. Even very horizontal companies like, I think it was Airtable. I was listening to a podcast about them in their early days, and they stayed horizontal for a long time. And the founder at the end of the podcast was like, I wish we had picked a segment earlier. And they're actually backtracking now. And if you look at some of the big horizontal players, Asana or whoever, they'll have extremely specific personas, and they have enough money and enough people to execute 25 different go-to-market plans at once. We have a dedicated team of SDRs and account executives and product-led people in marketing, all just targeting this segment. And then we have another for this segment. So you can get there faster. Eventually, you can layer on and become this massive Amazon that serves everyone doing everything. But you have to start and segment startups unless you somehow get an investor to give you, $100 million or whatever. Open AI just got, $10 billion offer from Microsoft. Like, yeah, they can go to market in a slightly different way than you probably can. But without the money, you kind of have to choose.
Yeah. Yeah, because and you didn't show it there, but they have the kind of the messaging house, right? Like atomic, I guess, messaging. All those pieces add up into your sales deck, into your, demo, into your onboarding experience, into your landing page. So every time you pick another segment or an ICP or persona that you're trying to message towards, the amount of connections that you need to make or different permutations of messaging just amplifies.
Exactly.
I think my video's tweaking out a little bit here. Apologize. One more question here. I know. One more question here from LinkedIn user. Looks like it's Chris Ewell from LinkedIn. Doesn't bring it in, but what would you suggest for an early stage company that is on the path to finding product market fit?
Yeah, very, very similar to my last answer. I think I would say the same thing. I would say test it, experiment, write the pages specific for each of those ones that you think it might be this, you think it might be this, but you just need to land enough customers to make the decision. So if you're landing a bunch in one area, that's probably a good sign that that's where you should go. If you're landing a bunch across, then I would kind of go through that different questions to compare the segments against each other and try to get to a primary segment that meets the criteria. And again, like if you're a bootstrap company or you're a venture-backed company, it also changes the game, right? Like venture-backed companies need to scale incredibly fast. So that determines what types of segments you go for. Where a bootstrap company, they can take their time and they might say, this segment likes us better. We solve their problem better. They're not as immediately profitable, but long-term, this will make more sense with us being a bootstrap company. So you think about your criteria of what your growth goals are, and then choose the segment that's going to help you reach whatever that is. And that's probably like at a high level what we would say.
Yeah. I think the other part of that I would just add is like a lot of times as a founder, you're going to have to trudge through, hell and high water to ultimately make your startup work. So you might get segments early on or customers early on that you're just not passionate about serving, or they're asking you to do things that aren't really in line with your product vision or where you want to take the company. And that's also a decision of, hey, do we really want to serve this segment? If I could get a lot of growth in this segment, is that really the biggest opportunity when you mix all these variables together or not? Another question here from LinkedIn. What are the must-have sections that your landing pages should have? I've seen some that are short and some are long.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, we have like a standard framework that we start with. Sometimes we'll add depending on like what they're trying to do, or depending on the product maturity of the maturity of the product category. So if you're in a very new product category that doesn't really exist, you might need to spend a little more time evangelizing the product category before you can even talk about the product. So we would add like a section. A really good example that you can look up is endgame.io. They have a section in theirs that's like the problem. And it basically lists out, because they're doing a very new category, product-led sales, like a CRM for product-led sales. So they kind of have to do a little evangelizing about what even is this? Why would this matter? But yeah, it really goes back to this slide. And I think maybe if you had joined late, you probably would have missed it. But it goes back to this slide. We usually try to hit this: a hero section, which is the main capability, the product category for persona and company type, and then some sort of credentials, value prop 1, 2, and 3, testimonials, and then how it works. So that's like our atomic elements that we would choose.
Yeah, thanks, Anthony. And I was just pulling up this as well that you had mentioned around, just the example.
Yeah, we reference this page a lot. The one thing I don't like about it is I don't love that giant video, because I think most people won't click it, but and it takes up so much space. So but I do like this piece. I love that it's like very clear the problem, a lot of empathy built. And then here goes, right? Like the solution, and then these are their 3 main value props, right? And you can kind of see it. Obviously, there's even stuff on here that I would tweak, but this is a good page that we like to reference. Another funny one that I've referenced in the past that I think is a good one. I saw Mike had the question, do you have any examples of pages that you really like? This one, the other one I think is good is actually, ironically, the roast my landing page guy. So there's a guy whose whole product is he roasts your landing page to make it better. And his page is actually pretty good. It kind of hits on all the elements, really explains it in a good way. So you could definitely look that up.
Yeah, that's a good example. You linked it out, Jacob. I was just checking. So awesome. I have a couple other questions if there's none kind of from the chat. So, we talked about horizontal platforms, we talked about Slack, we talked about Asana, some other companies. I mean, early on, how should horizontal platforms like think about marketing their products? If they aren't specific to an industry, what's your recommendation for them on their homepage, on potentially other pages? How do you handle that?
Yeah, I think it would be, you can see, like we talk about like information architecture, that there's like a high level homepage with a horizontal product that may not be as specific. That may be more like just the main use cases. You can look at the one for Loom. Loom's a great example, actually. Andrew, if you want to pull that up as we're chatting. Loom, what they do on their homepage, they're very just like what the product is. Like, what the heck is this thing? And they'll walk through a couple different features, and you'll probably have to do it logged out, right? Or incognito mode. Yeah. So their hero, Loom on, meetings off, record quick videos to update your team, cut down meetings by 29%. They're missing a lot of those key elements of company type and stuff, but that's also because they're extremely horizontal. So you might assume that they can just message to everyone and be fine. And so if you scroll down a little bit further, you'll see that it's trusted by section, right? And then it's basically how it works. Record your screen and camera, share with a link, keep the conversation going. So I don't really have like, what pain does that necessarily solve? I'm missing a lot of that stuff. But the way they get around that is if you go up there, they have use cases and 4 different types of businesses up at the top. They have those drop down menus. And these sub pages mirror very closely to the format that we're suggesting. So if you're a horizontal product, you're going to be testing a lot of these different things. So you might build what you think are the top 3 use cases and actually go to market with those in a small way, right? You could be running ads, you could be posting about them on LinkedIn, you could be doing it in Slack groups, whatever it is. You would basically build these pages as experimentation tools, and then use your homepage just as a high level what this is used for. And in that place, in that type of scenario, these sub pages become the main sales enablement tools. Whether it's product-led or sales-led, these are the things that you actually drive people to. You wouldn't drive them to your homepage. You would drive the sales team to the Loom for Sales page so that you can stay hyper-specific with your segment.
Right.
See, Loom for Engineering, same thing.
Right. And just to kind of reiterate the point before, if you're an early stage startup and you're Loom and you're trying to come after all these markets without any data, right, where are you getting the most growth from? You could, if you had a marketing budget, you're doing pay-per-click ads, you're doing maybe outbound.
Yeah.
All of those things in each one of these verticals is going to, pepper your team across a ton of things. It's going to be very hard to iterate and ultimately find something that works or what the right scenario is. It'd be interesting to take a look at what Loom's positioning was early on, and maybe we can give an update on that because, obviously not every company starts out with 15 use cases and hey, here's who it's for. If you do, as a solo founder, even a small team, it's going to be very hard to have resonance in any of those markets, especially when your believability isn't quite there yet.
Yeah, and another big unlock with the horizontal company is people have probably seen lots of things that a lot of them grow by being community led. So that's another angle, and then like the template angle of like creating templates. So the template mode is exactly what we're suggesting to do. It's picking a specific persona who's doing something a certain way, runs into a problem, and then your template is the new capability. It allows, unlocks it, it solves it, right? So the template is the feature for that unlocks a new capability that drives the benefits and stuff. So creating different templates across is very similar to what we're doing. It's like, we would say it's like the narrative, the same messaging narrative, just packaged in a template versus packaged in a landing page. So the same product marketing, like fundamentals, base level stuff applies. It's just packaged in a slightly different way.
Yeah. Well, and I think like one of the things that I see founders, we haven't really talked about this specifically, but in the strategy is like not even mapping out. If you're able to share your screen, Anthony, and go back to, hey, here's the capability with a persona, with feature benefit. A lot of startups, when they start, they don't even really think about the product they're making, which does the features that are entail and about that user's journey. So I think, product strategy and product marketing need to go hand in hand.
Yeah, for
as
sure.
you look at, this, but then also, the next one where it's the bridge is like,
Oh yeah.
if you don't define out exactly who it's for and the problems they have and what they're using today, you getting to any capability where you help them improve, it's really not going to be that helpful or that targeted. A lot of people think, oh, I'm going to go right to an app, or I'm going to go right to, I have this idea for this one feature that I think is going to re-evangelize this, without going in and understanding, like, why can't people solve it today? What are they doing? I mean, really, we're talking about core fundamentals of product strategy and startup strategy that then, appears on your landing page, because that's where you position. And so when you do those really well, all of those things are really well in alignment. Like your product roadmap today matches your positioning today and your vision for where the roadmap goes. Obviously, that's something else you pitch investors. Like, hey, today Amazon's selling books. We're going to solve all the logistical problems to, have I forget what it is. He had like the most SKUs in the world is based in books because of all the different titles. So they solve that at scale to source products from all these different places around the globe and get them shipped to you in, 2-3 days. If they can solve that problem, they can do that with any product, right? And I'm sure behind the scenes, that's what Bezos was pitching, is like, if we can solve the most complex product with the most amount of dynamic SKUs, we can apply that across any industry. And that can be true for your startup too, but you have to start somewhere where you can get the traction that then affords you to kind of grow and, run your go-to-market beyond those initial segments.
And it goes back to what you always talk about, right? Like validating things. Like what happens is that usually in the mind of a more engineering minded or product minded founder, what they usually do is they actually do these things. They just do it in a split second, and they don't always necessarily go validate that it's true. So when they build a feature, if you ask a founder, a product minded founder, why did you build this feature? Who did you build it for? They'll actually have an answer. They'll say, well, I've seen this happen and that. And then we say, is that actually true? And then they might say, well, I mean, I think so.
Yeah.
But they might never have gone to check, where if they had like done some more like traditional lean startup type stuff, try to validate that these problems exist before spending the time building it, they would have realized, oh, actually, they don't have that problem, or they have a slight variation of the problem. And I would build the feature differently, knowing that that was the case,
Right. Yeah, that's a great point. Looks like there's a couple other questions. Adam, yep, there'll be a recording. Jacob, you responded. Thank you for that. And then Brad asked, do you have a service of a quick audit or something? Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, look at that. Just teeing it up for a plug for our audit. Yeah, we do landing page audits. It's a flat rate, $500. So we try to keep it extremely low so that it's like a no-brainer, and you're not, every early stage startup, the question is, do I have enough runway to keep going? The last thing we want to do is burn through all your runway. So keep it low price. You can actually just purchase it as a self-serve link. I have a Notion page linked on my LinkedIn right underneath my profile, and you can actually go in there, purchase the audit. It's like a 2-day turnaround, and then we'll go through your entire homepage, and we give you a Figma file and an overview. It's usually like a 10 to 20 minute video talking through it. And then sometimes we'll meet together and discuss if there's ways that we want to work together to improve any of the issues that get serviced just throughout the audit. But a lot of people just get the audit and they're like, this was really helpful, I'll make the changes myself, and they move on, and that's totally fine. So
yeah, thanks, Brett. All right, without any other questions, I think we're good to wrap up, unless Jacob, you have anything. One more from Brad.
Yeah, it would be me. I do me or my partner Robert, and he's like me, but like 10 times smarter and 10 times more experience. So one of the two of us would audit your site. Yeah, the whole product marketing team at Headway is the two of us. So there's no other like juniors that we hand these things off to.
Yeah, thanks, Brett. Any questions you have, Jacob, before we wrap up, or any thoughts you wanted to kind of add?
No, I think this was a great conversation. Yeah, I love all the questions coming in the comments. It's really helpful to us because it helps us understand, if we talk about this topic again, what things we need to consider. So again, your feedback and your comments like help us make better content, be more helpful to you, all that kind of stuff. And if there's any other topics that you're interested in learning from us, or have specific questions after seeing this recording, maybe, reach out to Anthony, reach out to Andrew, leave a comment, with a question or whatever. Like, we want to know what you want to learn, because we do this every single month, this live stream. We're looking to do more with the other teams as well, from design and development. And as a reminder, like, this recording is here on LinkedIn. It's also on YouTube. And if you haven't checked out our YouTube channel, be sure to do that. It should be youtube.com/headwayio. There should be a link in the comments already too. I think I just shared it with Adam. But yeah, we have a ton of content around stuff like this. So crafting, better landing pages and home pages, and getting your messaging and positioning in a better spot for today. And then knowing that, hey, in the future that can change. And then also we have things around, just UX and UI design, hiring developers, hiring designers, building a strong product team culture, early, for everything basically from early stage startups to high growth startups like Series A, B, and C. So yeah, there's a lot of content. I think we have over 100 videos now on the YouTube channel, which is kind of hard to, or it's kind of crazy to think about. Yeah, lots of stuff there.
There's a lot.
Thanks. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff there. Yeah, and I know this year we're going to be doing a bigger push into YouTube with more content. So we have lots in the planning stages right now. We're looking forward to it. We just hit 700,000 views on the channel, almost 9,000 subscribers. So spread the word. We appreciate it. The more you support us, the more we can support you. It's like, we're just here to help, and want to, help people excel, whether it's their startup or if they're just work at a startup and you want to accelerate your career. Like, there's something there for you. So yeah, love it. That's all I got.
Yeah. Thanks, Jacob. Thanks, Anthony, for kind of sharing that model and answering questions. If you have questions that come, ahoy@headway.io, or reach out to us on LinkedIn, and we'll see you on the next one.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. Take care, and have a good one.
See ya.